So this is, again, Mark Fisher with Mark and the Millennials, and this podcast is called Democrat Destruction. No surprise there, because wherever Democrats govern, there is massive destruction. And there's no better place to look for that destruction than Mayor DeBlasio. Because Mayor DeBlasio says his mission is to redistribute wealth. That's right, Mayor DeBlasio says his mission is to redistribute wealth. I can't believe any American elected official would actually say this. Because you know with Mayor DeBlasio, not only is he saying it, but he really is engaging in doing it. I mean, he's trying to redistribute wealth. We're not just talking about wealth from, billionaires, because quite frankly, DeBlasio is very much in cahoots with the billionaires. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about redistributing wealth from the middle class to everybody else. Because, maybe he's also talking about people that are phenomenally wealthy too. But it doesn't matter because he's chasing them all out of New York. So Mayor DeBlasio was at a press conference recently, just a few days ago, and he's talking about educational equity, which of course is a whole nother issue, because what is educational equity? Equity to Democrats these days, it's one of those words that they use that really means a lot of different things, not just one thing. So equity to Democrats in education doesn't just mean opportunity at the starting gate in education, to give people equal opportunity when they go to school to have an education. And as everybody knows who is a podcast listener, education actually requires a contract with the people who are learning. These are the children, right? They actually have to make an effort to learn. There's a contract that they're entering into. Yeah, we will teach you, but you actually have to do the work in order to learn. You've got to do the homework, you have to do the reading, you have to do the studying. And equity to the Democrat woke politician means no, you actually don't have to do the work, because the outcomes should always be the same. So if you have people in your classroom who are doing extraordinarily well, and they're very bright, many of them just naturally bright, but many others who are actually doing the work and keeping up with the work, and they're excelling, they have to be pulled back, because equity means you can't get ahead of anyone else based on merit. And that is the modern Democrat definition of equity in education. It's really what they're talking about. It means so many different things. What it really means is wealth redistribution. So Mayor DeBlasio is in a press conference, and he's talking primarily about educational issues in New York City. Why? Because New York City closed down all the public schools, and kids are still learning remotely, which means they're not learning. Let's face it. Are you learning some things? Yeah. Are you learning what you should be learning in the classroom? Because in the classroom, you can actually truly interact with human beings in a much more direct way, in a much more helpful way. You can't do that so much on Zoom classes. It just doesn't work. So de Blasio is saying, well, we don't have enough equity in public education. And he's using COVID as an excuse for socialism, for Marxism. And with de Blasio, he doesn't even care. He just literally says it. He says it outright. We have a clip of Mayor de Blasio saying his mission is to redistribute wealth. You can't believe it. We have that clip, and here it is.
Where if you're talking about the problems of disparity, if you're talking about structural racism, certainly policing is not the only area to talk about. There are many areas to talk about, and education must be front and center. There has been so much that needed to be addressed in education in New York City. And from the beginning, what I tried to focus on was a very simple concept, equity and excellence, that we needed to profoundly change the distribution of resources. I like to say very bluntly, our mission is to redistribute wealth. A lot of people bristle at that phrase. That is, in fact, the phrase we need to use.
So he admits it. We need to redistribute wealth, says Mayor DeBlasio in an education press conference. He says we need to redistribute wealth. So they're using public education to try to convince people that there needs to be wealth redistribution. And if Mayor DeBlasio were really concerned about public education in New York City, and he was really concerned about people falling behind because they were learning via Zoom, then you know what he would do? He would let kids have school vouchers so their parents could send them to private schools because, oh, by the way, the private schools are open. They're open. It's the public schools who are closed because of the teachers' unions and because of the payola between those thugs in the teachers' unions. Yes, you heard me say that. Thugs in the teachers' unions. Not the teachers, by the way, because I know that someone's going to try to call me out on this. The rank and file teachers, generally speaking, are fantastic, right? We know that. We all know that. But the people who run the teachers' unions, the operatives, those are thugs because their job is to basically take as much money as the public till as possible and redistribute that money to the teachers rather than focus on public education. Why do we know this? We know this because they have been lobbying like crazy to keep schools closed across America. In every single major city, schools are closed because of the teachers' unions. It's not what the parents want. And of course, in Florida, as everybody knows, in Florida, they've got a hybrid model, right? You can go to school 5 days a week in class, or if you so choose, you can stay home and learn by Zoom. But as Governor DeSantis says in Florida, hey, if you're learning from home and you're falling behind, we're going to notify your parents that it's just not working out, and they need to know that it's not working out because more than likely you are falling behind. So that's not enough in New York City. Not only is that happening with the redistribution of wealth and equity in education, according to Mayor DeBlasio, but he also says Black Lives Matter. We also have a Black Lives Matter resolution which passes in New York City schools. So this is WABC 77 Talk Radio. They have an article that's out, and it says, in New York, after 3 years, the Black Lives Matter It's School resolution has passed, and the initiative will be implemented in New York City public schools. In other words, they're going to implement this as curriculum, Black Lives Matter, in New York City public schools. More UFT, UFT, which is the Movement of Rank and File Educators Health Justice Working Group of the United Federation of Teachers Union in New York City, quite a mouthful, announced the initiative in a tweet Wednesday. It's unclear when this will be implemented. WABC radio host Rich Valdez had strong words for the resolution's passage. This flies in the face of Americanism, inclusion, and the unity by promoting the plight of one racial group over others. Valdez, who is Latino and a member of President Trump's National Diversity Coalition, added, per their Black Lives Matter website, BLM's own adherence to Marxist principles are incongruent with most Americans. Yeah, exactly. But nonetheless, Black Lives Matter resolution passes with the teachers union in New York City schools, and they're going to turn it into curriculum. In other words, they're going to teach your children the Mayor DeBlasio version of equity and equality, which means redistribution of wealth, which means Marxism, Leninism, which means socialism. And they're going to say to you, well, the reason little Johnny is not doing well in public school isn't because of merit, isn't because of the less effort that Johnny's putting in relative to the other students. It's because of the color of his skin. Folks, this is exactly what's wrong with the BLM movement. This is exactly what's wrong with the entire Democrat Party. Everything always comes down to race rather than effort, rather than motivation, rather than, and don't call me out on this. Don't say, oh, are you saying that one race isn't? No, I'm not saying that one race isn't motivated versus another. The opposite. I'm saying it's about the individual. It's about the individual putting the work in and actually being responsible for what they do and for their own behavior. And everybody knows it, right? But no one wants to talk about it, because if you do talk about it today in America and you are working for a large corporation, you could actually get fired. You could actually get fired. You could actually get fired to the teachers union now by the public school system for basically saying, no, I think BLM is Marxist and it's not really a real curriculum, because it's not a real curriculum. It's a religion. That's really what it is. So way to go, Mayor DeBlasio, with your redistribution of wealth. How's that working as New York City completely and utterly falls apart with your governorship of the city, of your mayorship of the city? Just a disaster. And that's Mayor DeBlasio says his mission is to redistribute wealth.